I can't decide which story I should tell to kick this event off, but several of you were kind enough to comment on Mom and Dad, so I have to tell you, when I left office, Laura, probably in 2002, one of the papers, I think, did an interview with my dad and asked him, after those years, how he thought I had done as the governor of Kansas. And his exact quote, which they printed, was that he thought I'd done a damn sight better than he thought I would have. I can always count on being humbled when I come home. Thank you all for coming out today. This is a tremendous crowd and a good way for us to start a full day for Laura, finishing off what I know has been a grueling, very challenging campaign. And I know from experience, and I want to start by telling you how much I appreciate that you threw your hat in the ring and have done such a fabulous job touring the state, sharing a positive message about what we need to do to get Kansas on the right track again. I'm very proud to stand here as one of about 4 other governors, former governors, who have endorsed Laura. I don't know that Mark Parkinson officially could endorse her, but I know he's for you because we talked about it. And the other former governor we don't want the endorsement of. So we have all the living former governors have come together to throw their support behind Laura Kelly. I know from a distance I've watched the difficult 7, now 8 years that this state has gone through. The devastation to our public education system, the funding for higher education, our roads, our public safety, the economy in general. And it's just time that we turn the corner, turn the page, and start anew. And I know from comparing the backgrounds, the experience of those individuals running, Laura Kelly is the right answer for Kansas at this time. I have known Laura for, we know, at least 32 years, probably. I followed her during her time as a member of the Kansas legislature. I know how hard she works to reach across the aisle. She's got that ability to say to folks, let's try to find some compromise and something that brings us together for the good of our state. And I know that's the same approach she's going to take to solving these very, very tough problems. And trust me, even if elected, it's not going to be easy to get everything done in a hurry. It's going to take time to rebuild from where we've been. But I'm very proud today as a former governor, as a former Republican governor, and I appreciate my Republican friends who have joined us here. And I will tell you, Laura, I've heard from a lot of them, and they're with you. And what we need for you all to do, I know you're going to vote or have already voted, but you need to tell some people to get out and vote if they haven't already. If there's anybody on the fence, you need to figure out a way to convince them, arm twist them. I'll bring my wife Linda out, and trust me, that would do it if Linda talks to them, because she's fired up as well, Laura. It's a great privilege for me to welcome to my hometown the individual that I hope by late tomorrow night is elected as the next governor of our state, Laura Kelly.
Thank you very much, Bill. And we're going to start this off by telling parental confidence stories. I want to go back to my very first race for the state senate. It was 2003. I was running for the 2004 election, and I called my mother, who was living in Fort Collins at that time, and I said, Mom, I need you to make a substantial contribution to my campaign. And she said to me, you want me to support a Democrat? And I said, yes, I'm your daughter, for crying out loud. Yes, I want you to. And so finally she did. But, you know, I also need to tell you, when my husband and I came to Kansas 32 years ago, we were living in Denver, and we met and we married. We had our first child, and we really wanted to put down some roots. I had been raised in a military family and just moved all over. I lived on 3 continents by the time I was 6, and then continued moving after that. So when I had my own child, I really wanted to be able to put down roots and raise her in a community, in a neighborhood. So we thought long and hard about where we would do that. And in the end, we chose to come to Kansas. And we actually lived in Salina, Kansas for the first 18 months, right? And so we were here. We loved this community. My husband was with the Salina Clinic. He's a physician. He came and took a position at the Salina Clinic, which I think is now folded into Maori or into the hospital. So no, it's not there. But while I was here, I don't know how many of you remember Don Jolly. Okay. And Don was Director of Parks and Recreation here in Salina, and I happen to know Don because both of us were very active in the National Recreation and Park Association. You know, Don with Park and Recreation Administration. I was very active in the National Therapeutic Recreation Society because that was actually my training, my background. I'd worked in mental health and in physical health in Denver before I moved here. When I moved here, there really wasn't anything in my chosen field to go into here. But as fate would have it, the Kansas Recreation and Park Association was going to hire their very first executive director. And that office was, because of Don Jolly, was going to be housed here. So it was in Memorial Hall under the stairs. That was it. Yeah, I got the job, went over there. I had a piece of paper, notebook paper with all the members on it. I think there were fewer than 100 at the time. That was it. We didn't own a pencil. We didn't own a computer. We owned nothing. So I built that from scratch. In about 18 months after we were here, my husband got an unsolicited offer at Topeka, and the association was very happy to move a state association office close to the Capitol. So we did that, but I spent those first 18 months driving back and forth to Topeka with Don Jolly, because we were recodifying the Recreation Commission statutes at that time, and that man was a font of information and of history and of great storytelling. So I still see him. He is living in a nursing facility in Marion, Kansas. So whenever I'm in the neighborhood, I stop by to see him because he's an icon and just a fabulous guy. Anyway, so fast forward, I was with the Recreation and Park Association for 18 years, traveled all over the state, got to know it, got to love the people, and really affirmed our decision to make this our home. It was in 2004 when my state senator was voting to defund public schools that I said, can't go there. So I stepped up and I ran against him. I won by a grand total of 100 votes after all was counted, but got into the state senate, and I've been able to win 3 times after that in a very Republican district. So I'm used to operating in a red environment, but I think part of why it works for me is because I really don't have an ideological bone in my body. I'm really just a problem solver. You know, that's what I do. That's what mothers do all the time. I think all the women in this room would agree that's, you know, we look for ways for solutions, and so that's how I've been. I also was a math major when I went into college, and so I can count. In the Democratic caucus in the Senate, the most I've ever had has been 10. It takes 21 votes to pass a bill in the Senate. Go figure that out. So I immediately went across the aisle and formed relationships with my Republican colleagues. And is Pete here? Yeah. Where's Pete? Pete Bernhardt being one of them, that I formed a good relationship with. we worked very, very closely together. So it was through all of that that I was able to accomplish anything, and really led the charge on early childhood education, for instance, and I've been a major supporter of our public schools. And that's exactly why I am running for governor, is because we've all seen what's happened in the last 8 years. And our public schools have been decimated, but so have our infrastructure projects. I mean, Bill, of all people, would care about our roads. We have taken $2 billion out of the road program over the past 8 years. We've not been building the projects that we have promised to communities we would do, and we haven't even been able to do the maintenance. In fact, last year we bonded $400 million for maintenance. That is fiscal mismanagement. We should never be in a situation where we're doing that. So we've got that to fix. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to expand Medicaid. We have left almost $3 billion of our taxpayer money back in Washington, D.C. to be spent in other states for them to take care of their folks, but also for them to build their economy. Louisiana expanded Medicaid just 2 years ago. In the first year, they saw $317 million cost savings. In addition, they created 19,000 new jobs. That could have been happening in Kansas. Instead, we had 2 rural hospitals close. We have others on the brink of closure. We have got to do that. The legislature did pass Medicaid expansion 2 years ago. Brownback vetoed it. I won't veto it. I think the legislature will pass it again. And we can get that started. And we have a slew of other things that we need to fix. Our foster care system's a mess, our mental health system's a mess, our correction system's a mess. I could go on and on. There's our Department of Commerce is a mess. There's hardly an agency across the state that doesn't need some very serious work. We will get right on it with education being number one. We'll be prioritizing everything else, and as resources allow, we're going to rebuild those agencies so that they can provide the fundamental government services that we need and want in this state, but also so they can protect our citizens, particularly our children. And then one last thing that I pledged to do as governor is, told John this just before, we will restore the Kansas Arts Commission. Not expanding Medicaid was the dumbest thing that's happened in the last 8 years, but abolishing the Kansas Arts Commission was right up there. We were spending $750,000 on the Arts Commission. We were leveraging $28 million to come into this state to promote the arts in our communities and our artists across the state. It's a simple, low-cost investment, great return. We will get back to that. If I can do it by executive order, I will. If not, I'll work with the legislature. So I want to thank all of you for being here. This is an incredible turnout. This is indicative of the kind of energy and enthusiasm that we are seeing all over the state. Kansans get it. We need to keep moving forward. We cannot take a U-turn and go back off that cliff. So I appreciate the support that you're going to give me. I'd like you to look very closely at down ballot, particularly at the Secretary of State's position. We have Brian Bam McClendon running. This guy is brilliant. Google, Uber, created Google Earth, really, and what he can do in our Secretary of State's office to end the voter suppression and instead encourage people to vote. It's absolutely remarkable. In fact, if any of you have seen the Rachel Maddow show or other national shows where they're featuring Dodge City and the suppression that's going on there, it's immoral what's happening out there. So Brian is the one who put that on the map. He went out to Dodge City and he walked the 1.5 miles from the last bus stop in Dodge City out to the remote polling place that they have with an umbrella because it was raining. While he's doing that, his wife is back at the last bus stop waiting for the bus, which never came. So it's a disgrace, but you know what? It's going to backfire. Melissa Etheridge is chartering a bus tomorrow, and she will be taking people. And there are a number of groups that have been chartering 18-passenger shuttles since Monday. They've been going out to the workplaces, picking people up, taking them door to door. Dodge City Public Transportation providing free door-to-door, Lyft, Uber, and the Democratic Party out there has it all set up. So I won't be surprised if we see the largest turnout of voters in Dodge City ever. So here we go. Thanks for all your help. Let's take our state back tomorrow.